It is Friday, February 2nd. Let's talk PlayStation. Welcome back, everyone, to another Persona 3 Reload episode of LTPS. As always, let's begin with our PS Plus reminder. This is your last call to claim the January games before they go away. February 6th, it's going to change over to Rollerdrome on PS4, PS5, Foam Stars on PS4, PS5, and Steel Rising on PS5 as well. Not a bad lineup. I would honestly argue this is one of the strongest PS Plus lineups we've had in a very long time, just by sheer virtue of not only having a day one title on there, which is always welcomed. No guarantee Foam Stars is going to be a big knockout success, but nice to have a new title launch on PS Plus. And then also Rollerdrome and Steel Rising. You know, these are two games, really solid, a lot of fun, but I feel like many probably either overlooked them, didn't have the time to play them, they came out during a very busy time, so, I mean, those are always, like, really good candidates for eventually showing up on subscription. So, being on PS Plus, I think it's a really strong month. And then as far as premium goes, also worth mentioning that Spider-Man 2 on the 6th is also getting a trial. So for premium members, you can play for 2 hours, and that's enough to do the opening sequence, a few mainline missions, maybe some side stuff. But if you want to try that out, then that'll be available. And also, as of right now, Alan Wake 2 does have a 3-hour trial, and that's very much a big Game of the Year title from last year as well, right? So I suggest also trying out that trial. But moving on to our first news story, Gran Turismo Sport is now officially offline, as it was scheduled to do so, but that also means that patch 1.69 was sent out for the game, and this makes it completely playable offline for the bulk of the single-player content, so obviously online modes are no longer accessible. But still, I guess the one silver lining here is that it's refreshing to see that, you know, for a big studio and publisher, there is some kind of post, I guess legacy support here, which is sort of sending out a final patch to make the game not tied to the server, because that was the entire problem with Gran Turismo, and it's still an ongoing problem that some are looking at GT7 right now with that sort of, future outlook. But that implies that Polyphony will do the same for GT7 when that game is eventually ready to sunset as well. Also worth remembering that the Platinum is now unobtainable, so if you've never played GT Sport before, then getting into it now, you can play it offline, but you will not be able to earn a Platinum unless you've earned all the online trophies ahead of time. Moving on to one of our big news stories from this past week, it's of course a brand new State of Play presentation, which was announced on Monday, aired on Wednesday. I'm sure a lot of you probably already saw, but we did reactions, impressions, so we already covered most of it, but something where if you did not see it, then let's do a very quick, brief recap on every single announcement in order of appearance. So the State of Play kicked off with a new trailer for Helldivers 2, then Stellar Blade got a gameplay and story deep dive with a confirmed release date of April 26th. Sonic Cross Shadow Generations was announced, coming autumn 2024. MiHoYo's Zenless Zone Zero is confirmed to be in development for PS5. Foam Stars got another trailer. Dave the Diver is coming to PlayStation this April with Godzilla DLC in May. V-Rising is coming to PS5 this year. Looks like that has console exclusivity for now. Silent Hill The Short Message shadow dropped on PSN. Silent Hill 2 gameplay was finally revealed. Still no release date. Ken Levine's studio, Ghost Story Games, showed new gameplay for Judas, or they revealed gameplay for Judas. Metro Awakening VR was announced for PSVR 2. Also, Legendary Tales is coming to PSVR 2 on February 8th. Then a new trailer for Dragon's Dogma 2 showed up. Rise of the Ronin got a gameplay deep dive. Until Dawn was confirmed for PS5 and PC coming this year, developed by Ballistic Moon. Death Stranding 2 on the Beach got a final name and a new trailer with gameplay and a wacky showing of story elements that is typical Kojima. Kojima also announced with Herman Hulst that they're partnering on a new tactical espionage IP for the next generation that will begin production after Death Stranding 2. And then finally, we learned that there's another State of Play coming on February 6th for a deep dive on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Now, that is a great lead-in for our next story, which is covering up some details from the State of Play now that the dust has settled. So we're seeing from the PlayStation Game Sizes account over on X, where they scrape data from the PSN backend, it looks like a FF7 Rebirth demo has appeared on PSN, so it seems very likely that that's probably going to be announced and either released right then and there or shortly after on PSN. And the title ID does make the suggestion that there is going to be a save file transfer as well. All seems very par for the course. We knew this game was going to get a demo anyway, but now the cat's unsurprisingly, out of the bag on this one, we will be getting a deep dive and then also a demo available very soon for this game. And in other news, we can also mention that for the actual final size of the game, well, not true final size, there might be another patch that will show up on PSN at some point, but we are seeing that this game is around 140 gigabytes, which is not only extremely big, but that is also why we are rocking 2 discs on this bad boy, baby. You love to see it. Now, going back to Kojima's very surprising announcement of a brand new IP being made in collaboration with PlayStation again, after they shipped Death Stranding 2, at the time, during the State of Play, they didn't actually give this thing a name, but it turns out it does have some kind of working title for now, so shortly after the presentation was over, Kojima confirmed over on X, and he gave this quote here where he says, FFVII, working title, will be the 3rd new original IP since the establishment of Kojima Productions. It is a completely new action espionage for the next generation. It will be created using cutting-edge technology and the best talents from around the world, both from film and video games. Of course, this is an interactive game, but the look, story, theme, cast, acting, fashion, sound, etc. are all at the next level of digital entertainment. That could be called a movie. So, during the actual live stream, my immediate thought was like, did he really just announce a PS6 game, or is he talking more about, well, what he was building up to, which was a culmination of his work and his career, and so maybe it's next gen in that context, but now with the show being over, I mean, the timeline is very clear based on what he said. If they're going to, do this game after Death Stranding 2, which they're going to ship in 2025, this thing has to be in pre-production for, a number of years, then full production for a year and a half, 2 years. Console cycles, typically 6 to 8 years. The ABK situation had court documents where Microsoft is expecting them and Sony to ship new consoles in 2028. But even without that, we always knew console cycles are typically around that time. So, everything is lining up to where, yeah, this game is more than likely, at the very minimum, going to ship on PS6. If it's going to be a PlayStation 6 exclusive, as in it's a marquee title using all these headline technologies, and it's going to look magnificent, and, that is something we can't really comment on. We can't really say much of anything about this game because it's not even actively being made. So we cannot really say much of anything outside of, yes, we probably did just find out about a PlayStation 6 game, which is early, yes. It's funny seeing the two camps here, which has always been kind of in direct conflict with one another, and that is, how people want games to be announced. Many people are still very much in the space of wanting developers to not be as secretive, to not have a very secretive games business. Why aren't publishers outlining what they're doing for the next 10-something years, like movie studios? Even if they are going to get shuffled and moved around and canceled all the time, just put that stuff out there. And some don't want to hear about this. They think this was a useless announcement because it's not even being made. So it's like, oh, don't tell us until the game's like, at least 2 years out from eventually releasing, right? So it's interesting watching that play out, but either way, it's still something where if you're a diehard Kojima fan, Metal Gear fan, it's not like this is bad news, especially when we had those parallels from the original announcement with Kojima and Andrew House, the former president and CEO of Sony Computer Entertainment, and them backing Kojima to get Kojima Productions off the ground, fund what became Death Stranding, and now we're seeing that again for possibly a new IP on PlayStation 6. So it's an exciting prospect, but one that is going to take a very long time to bear some fruit. Moving on to another announcement where we got some much needed context, both officially and unofficially. That would be Until Dawn's PS5 and PC version being developed by Ballistic Moon, where first over on the PS blog, the team outlined exactly what they're doing for this version and how they're improving upon the original 2015's PS4 release. So they confirmed that they're completely rebuilding it in Unreal Engine 5, no Decima. There's going to be new and improved animations, building upon the original performances, and upgrading the characters, environments, and VFX. They're also adding a third-person camera, so you're no longer constrained to the fixed camera angles, and you'll be able to explore enhanced new locations. There's new interactions, new collectibles, and also the game soundtrack has a new score from the horror composer Mark Corvin. So it seems like they're doing a lot to this game, to the point where they're really blurring the lines between what is a remaster and what's a remake. But we did get more context unofficially from Time Extension. They ran a piece about how they spoke with former Supermassive staff, and it turns out we're learning more about potentially why Supermassive never made Until Dawn 2, despite the original game's success. So based on accounts from 6 former employees, Until Dawn 2 eventually became the Quarry, and the relationship between Sony and Supermassive went south because either Supermassive was, one, shopping around their Until Dawn 2 progress to other publishers, which of course they don't own the IP, so it would have to be something else, but apparently Sony did not like that, and that's why it did eventually become the Quarry, or two, Sony wasn't pleased with them pivoting to multi-platform with the Dark Pictures anthology. So there are conflicting words here in terms of what exactly happened, but it would appear as though that's why this never materialized into an Until Dawn 2 proper under Supermassive, because in theory, looking back at Until Dawn with the success and how it did a lot better than Sony was expecting, it became kind of a social media icon where a lot of people were talking about it, word of mouth, people streaming it and posting their playthroughs and people wanting to discuss their decisions. And, it very much leans into that, and that's why we saw a lot more games out of Supermassive, but they were eventually all multi-platform. Either way, this is probably painting us a good picture of why this played out the way that it did. More so, I guess, for now Ballistic Moon, which is comprised of a lot of, former Supermassive staff where they went and built their own studio. But to see them rebuilding the game in UE5 might also be very telling in that, this is not going to be the only game that they're shipping. It might be their first project, but, this might be something where they're building, a new foundation, some core technologies, and, rebuilding this game for potentially springboarding into Until Dawn 2, now that Sony can, have a studio in place to eventually ship something like Until Dawn 2, because conceivably, why would they not want to do Until Dawn 2, right? That's kind of the point that we're getting at here. So I'm almost mad that I did not think Ballistic's doing this Until Dawn thing, right? Because we knew Ballistic was partnering with Sony, and we knew the staff there. We knew this project was some kind of horror game. So yeah, it really all adds up, and that tells us what we might potentially be getting. Not even outside of them trying to very clearly align this with an Until Dawn movie, but this may very well be a springboard for either Until Dawn 2 or just something similar to it, but it could very much still be a Sony partnership. We'll have to wait and see, obviously, but for now, it does seem like we are getting a new Until Dawn game that is maybe a lot more on the side of being a remake instead of a remaster. Now, getting into our other news stories, we have more evidence of Hi-Fi Rush coming to PlayStation and also Nintendo Switch, which so far we have not actually known exactly if it will come to Switch and PlayStation, just that, there's been some conflicting words on what platforms it will show up on. Anyway, the point is, we saw the game get a new anniversary update where there's new in-game t-shirts, and so on Xbox there's one where it says Shadow Dropped, referencing how the game came out on Xbox, but there's 2 more shirts in there. One is red, it says Rock Out Anywhere, and one is blue, it says I'm Here Baby. So I don't know about you, but that seems even more clear as to what platforms it's probably showing up on, and more a matter of, I guess, when they're ready to talk about this. This would not be a thing where Sony would have the stage for this. I'm not even sure if we would get a PS blog post about it, but it seems like the running theory that makes the most sense is that maybe this will show up in the February Nintendo Direct whenever that does get confirmed, and it does show up, since Microsoft is more forthcoming with doing announcements in collaboration with Nintendo. So they will have the announcement of Hi-Fi Rush coming to Switch, but then after the fact we'll know that, based on a press release, it's also coming to PlayStation as well. So we might not have to wait too long on exactly when this is coming. Next up, let's go over this very interesting rumor that popped up yesterday for a possible PlayStation Vita 2, or whatever you want to call it, but in theory, a proper new PlayStation handheld with its own onboard hardware, not a remote play device, something where you could, in theory, play PS4 games on the go. So this rumor originates from Moore's Law is Dead over on their channel, where they discuss and analyze the broader technology and computer hardware landscape. They claim Sony has indeed paid AMD for a custom APU that's in the high-level design phase, but it's still at least 2 years away. So It's not technically confirmed or if it's even going to see a proper commercial release, but based on developer accounts, the speculation is that it could have 18 CUs to offer PS4 compatibility, and PS5 compatibility would be on a case-by-case basis and require a patch. Pretty obvious there considering the power delta of the hardware, so AAA PS5 exclusives would be most certainly not possible without serious compromises. But the alternative theory here, and again, this is speculation based on developer accounts and Moore's Law is dead, but this new handheld could be a part of the PlayStation 6 family of hardware, and also Moore's Law is claiming that AMD already has the contract for PlayStation 6. Now, for what it's worth, Tom Henderson, writing for Insider Gaming, says he's not heard anything and is unable to corroborate the story because so far we've seen with Tom throughout the PS5 cycle has a very good source high up within Sony that's been privy to the ongoings on the R&D side that's been, shipping all this family of products for the PlayStation 5 cycle. So in theory, if Tom knew, he should be finding out soon or at some point down the road if he keeps that source and that contact. But either way, it's something where this is a very fascinating story because we don't even have to really dive into the sort of I guess reliability of Moore's Law is dead or Tom in this case, right? Oh, the credibility, right? So why are they saying this? Why are they putting this info out there? It's something where this kind of dials back to many conversations we've had on this channel. Longtime viewers know exactly where this is going because anytime this topic comes up with the possibility of a new PlayStation handheld. Will Sony ever do a Vita 2? Will they ever do proper onboard hardware for portable? And I always go off on this little rant and say it's never going to happen. It will never happen again unless it is something like this. And the language I've always said as an example is a portable PS4. Now, at the time, because I said that years ago, but it was like something where okay, it's not viable when I said it back then. Although at some point down the road it will be, and that's very much going into the conversation of, the next generation Nintendo Switch, which should be getting revealed relatively soon. We're thinking it's going to happen at any point now, but based on the spec sheet for that platform, it's going to be within a similar performance level, right? And that's kind of where we're getting. So, and that's what makes it viable, right? And it's always been something where between the Steam Deck or the Switch, the two big examples people tend to bring up, Nintendo obviously carved out their own path here in terms of being relevant in a marketplace which no longer wants dedicated portables anymore, as in they made a portable and also home console all in one package, right? When you sell 150 million DSs and then 70 million 3DSs and you're cutting your successor platform in half, right? That's the best you can do for the new platform. The market is quickly changing. They knew that. They found a path with the Switch. The Steam Deck, while it's not moving millions and millions of units, people love their decks because you log in and your Steam library is there, and most of it works without any developer intervention. So it would never work if Sony shipped another bespoke PlayStation handheld that had its own SDK environment and developers have to ship games natively to that platform. It's not going to happen unless you log into this thing and you've already got a digital library waiting to go. So with that said, that's why this report, whether it's true or not, is very plausible, and I thought it was at least worth acknowledging because here's the other thing. I have no doubt in my mind Sony is not only working on a portable, but they've probably always worked on portables in perpetuity. Maybe there were some stints right after Vita where they kind of gave it a rest, but we're talking about a very big corporation. They have R&D for all sorts of things that a lot of it never ships as a commercial product. They're always filing patents for these extremely weird-looking devices that are sometimes so silly you can't imagine that they would release that. But there's still, that 1% that does eventually come out. So I have no doubt in my mind they've always been working and theorizing on what they could do in the portable landscape, and they're probably looking at Switch. They've been analyzing Switch, looking at Steam Deck, and maybe trying to figure out if there is a marketplace for doing a portable PS4 that could potentially have some compatibility with PS5 titles as well, which is not a far-fetched thing to think about either, because really PS4 in essence is a great baseline hardware for doing portable stuff, right? Not even so much the relevance of Nintendo of shipping a platform that's going to be in the same power range. So that alone could be a very good idea for Sony to also put out a portable for developer support and the ongoing long-term support for PS4 software, if that's what this thing's primarily going to play. But PS4 is a great baseline because nowadays when it comes to big budget, beautiful, gorgeous games that are really pushing the envelope for what's possible on hardware, the only reason why that's far and few between is simply the amount of studios and publishers that can fund those kind of projects, right? Like PS5 is not really the problem. A PlayStation 6 is not the problem. The PC environment's not a problem. We just don't have a lot of studios that can put out games like Horizon, Cyberpunk, Ragnarok, just any kind of beautiful looking game that you can think of. Those are far and few between. So there's still a large portion of games that come out today that could conceivably ship no problem on a portable PS4, another Switch, which is going to happen anyway, right? We should be expecting that is going to get revealed very soon at some point. So I know we're kind of going off on a crazy tangent here, but it's just something I've always thought and racked around in my brain. I was actually going to do something like this for a separate upload, but we can just have this conversation here, which is, on paper, this makes a lot of sense. I sincerely hope this actually does happen at some point. That's what I can't, that's what I'm unsure of, is will Sony actually do it? I think it is in their best interest to possibly, pursue this in a meaningful way. But for now, I think we will watch this very closely, see if we get more rumors, more substantial rumors, and we could finally get to a point where a portable PlayStation becomes viable again. We just had to wait for PS4 hardware to make sense in that form factor. Next up, we have a very peculiar thing that was discovered where, well, first this happened with Hardware Rivals, which is a 2016 PS4 exclusive published by Sony. It was a vehicle car combat game, and it kind of came and went. People forgot about it, but a trophy list popped up for the game on PS5. I think also there's like new DLC trophies on there. So this initially maybe started speculation on if there's going to be a new game, but it was also discovered that there was a very old account, a random Twitter account that was actually posting screenshots from this game that would have appeared to be an early PS5 build on a PS5 dev kit back in August 2020. This was a completely undiscovered account that was testing and sharing PS5 features, and it was just completely undiscovered. It was probably a Sony employee just testing out the game, and there's actually, testing out the game and the features. So there's actually footage of the game where the menus look a little different from the game that we know of today, with different button prompts and things like that. So there was probably an early PS5 build of this game. It's just really cool that this went completely undiscovered, because we were covering plenty of PS5 rumors at the time. We were like knee deep in that stuff, and this account was never discovered, but we could have actually seen, not only PS5 games, PS5 builds being tested, but also a little bit of the PS5 UI as well. And either way, I don't think this is going to actually pan out to like a new release of this game in particular. We see a lot of test trophy lists pop up on PSN. They never actually end up releasing. So maybe they were planning on doing a PS5 version, but I think what we have here is just kind of a cool discovery and not much else. Moving on to Media Molecule's Dreams, where for the longest time we were always wondering, why is there no PS5 version? What about a PC version? That makes a lot of sense. They were probably doing them, but how far along were they? Well, now we're finding out that maybe they were very close to actually getting those done before the eventual layoffs and then pivoting to a new project. This comes from Lance McDonald over on his live stream, where he's primarily known for data mining games, but he also live streams. He's a lot of fun to watch, and something where he was discussing he had known somebody that was working on and testing these upcoming versions, and apparently they were very far along, maybe close to actually shipping, and the PS5 version would have had mouse and keyboard support to complement the PC release to, obviously also have that. It would feature ray tracing, so it seems like they were very far along with these versions up until, again, we assume Sony pulled the plug and they just said, you got to move on to something else, basically. Now, quite honestly, I don't even think it's much a problem of not getting a PS5 and PC version. It would have helped. It would have went a long way, especially PC. My problem has still been, and I just discussed this with somebody else recently, but it's a matter of we never got, off-platform publishing with Dreams. That was the sales pitch for this game long-term. And it's not like they were shouting this from the rooftops like, oh, that's what this is going to be for sure. But it was always there where they were hinting at that's what they want to eventually get to at some point, or they're exploring it. And it's a shame that that did not happen because, I mean, there's so many examples of cool things in Dreams, but like, to have a PlayStation, then buy this one thing, boot that one thing to boot into another thing, it's just way too many hurdles, and I really would like to know exactly what the roadblock was here. You know, was it Media Molecule dragging their feet, or was it likely Sony not wanting to accommodate something that is going to be admittedly a bit more complicated with, you know, allowing this content to come off of Dreams, publishing on the store, and whether they start you know, if users can charge for it or not, right? There's liability, there's processing fees, and it kind of gets into a completely different thing that I can see why Sony maybe would not want to go through with that. Either way, you had a viable platform here where you've got multi-person teams making genuine large-scale content in Dreams, so kind of a bummer that it never got to that, and also eventually shipping on PS5 and PC, which PC I think would have really taken this thing to a different level. But either way, it's you know, always interesting to hear some insight into how far along those versions were. Next up, Sony has made a strategic investment in Carry First, which is the #1 games publisher in Africa. It's an undisclosed amount, but it is a strategic partnership in that right now they're in the exploratory stage to, you know, figure out some commercial opportunities. But it is something where the CEO and co-founder of Carry First had this to say, speaking with CNBC, where they say, and I quote, "As large companies like Sony that have really strong footholds in Tier 1 and Tier 2 markets start thinking about where the next billion customers and gamers are going to come from, our pitch is that Africa is a prime market for that." So this kind of goes into just more global expansion, which Sony has been doing for a lot of the PlayStation 5 cycle in a very big way. Kind of dials back to the globalization of the entire company in 2019, where we saw a lot of staff get shuffled around, the headquarters move, and things like that, right? But yeah, I mean, Africa, I think, would certainly be a market to take a look at. And if anything, I'm surprised that they weren't doing this sooner, but this is an investment that we don't have the amount. I would assume it's maybe not that much, but still enough to where they're probably looking at opportunities, and Africa I would consider to be one of them. Now, getting into the PlayStation Productions landscape, we have some very, very minor news here, but that is new footage from what we saw at CES, which is Sony's, the announcement of the Torchlight facility, which is just for filmmakers and creatives to, you know, have a space and tools to make things. And so we saw more footage of the Gravity Rush movie and also the Patapon thing that they're doing, which was cool to see. That's it. It's just new footage showing more of the Gravity Rush movie. And, well, I guess what goes into making a Gravity Rush movie. So I'm still just really surprised that Gravity Rush is getting this. That and Patapon, I still would like to know more about what exactly Patapon is going to be, since they are doing something there. But yeah, just new footage. I thought we'd display that, and I guess that's really about it. Something maybe more substantial would be the Grounded 2 documentary for The Last of Us Part 2, which comes out today. We can't acknowledge the contents of it because it's not out as I'm filming this, but thought it was also worth mentioning that between Neil and Kurt over at Naughty Dog, they did mention that headlines are coming. So I'm quite certain that they're implying that what is going to be shown in that documentary is going to generate headlines on either what happened at Naughty Dog, their methodology for making the game, or what happened during COVID. I'm sure there are going to be headlines today, so might as well put that out there. You might want to check out what's going on, because I'm sure there are very much some interesting details coming out of that documentary. Now let's end this show in the way all good shows end, and that is Sony acknowledging Bloodborne in some way, shape, or form, and this comes by way of Lilith Walther, the developer of the PS1-style demake of Bloodborne, also developing the Bloodborne carding game, which looks super cool, but it was recently delayed because someone came knocking at the door, and it was Sony. Now, the thing is, the game is not killed or anything. They just want the Bloodborne branding and association gone. So the project is still coming, but it will look a little different. Thought that was noteworthy because, I don't know, it just seems like, well, I guess nowadays with Nintendo, this is where they're a lot more litigious, and they'll kind of kill projects immediately. They want them taken down, and don't make this ever again. Don't release it. We'll sue you. And at least we can say for Sony, in this example, they were saying, hey, just don't use the Bloodborne name, please. We don't use that in this household. So I don't know if it's like good news, but at least it's cool to see that they didn't impede on what was a very cool indie project coming out, and so it should still be releasing at some point. Now, with all that said, it is time for Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway, where one of you can win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or X, and if you'd like to win a $10 PSN code, it is so simple. Follow the link down below, enter the Gleam giveaway, and supporting this channel a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week, because I'm trying to help pay for your games. Those are all the stories from this past week that I wanted to talk about with you all, and our Tuesday video was a PS5 Slim, like, starter guide, kinda, something where if you're a new owner, that's a great way to sort of jump in and find out all the tips and tricks and things like that. More of a renewed version of what I did in 2021, which I think a lot of you don't need to see it. I consider you a veteran if you watch LTPS, so don't mind me putting out some evergreen search-optimized content on the timeline once in a while. But on Wednesday, we did do the State of Play reactions and impressions, so if you want my more in-the-moment reactions as the State of Play happened to the big moments, then that was our Wednesday upload. But that is pretty much it. So that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.